After 7 years building a fortune overseas, Nathan Mercer returned to Colorado, expecting to find his mother living comfortably in the mountain home he had paid for. Instead, he found the house abandoned, the bank accounts untouched, and every trace of her erased. The sheriff called it a voluntary disappearance. His stepbrother insisted she had simply walked away. But 3 nights later, deep in a snow-covered wilderness reserve, a wounded wolf appeared outside Nathan's cabin and led him towards something impossible. Hidden among the pines was an elderly woman living alone in a collapsing shack. And when Nathan finally saw her face in the firelight, he realized the missing woman everyone claimed had vanished was his mother. Welcome to today's story. If you enjoy emotional drama and shocking twists, don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more unforgettable stories. And before we begin, let me know where you're watching from in the comments. 7 years earlier, Nathan had left believing he was securing his mother's future. At 42, Nathan Mercer was the kind of man people pointed to as proof that hard work paid off. He had spent years managing engineering projects across Europe and Asia, building a reputation that opened doors almost everywhere he went. His calendar was always full. His phone never stopped ringing. Yet during every long flight and every late-night meeting, one thought remained constant. His mother, Evelyn Mercer, had raised him alone after his father died. She worked long hours, skipped vacations, and quietly carried burdens Nathan only understood after he became an adult himself. Before leaving Colorado, he had bought her a beautiful mountain home overlooking a valley of pine trees. It had a stone fireplace, a wraparound porch, and large windows where she could watch the snowfall every winter. "You earned this," he had told her. Evelyn laughed and said she would never get used to living somewhere so nice. For years, Nathan sent money regularly, more than enough to cover expenses, more than enough to guarantee comfort. He trusted his stepbrother Grant Mercer to help with local matters when needed. And he trusted the occasional phone calls that always ended the same way. Everything is fine. So when Nathan finally drove back into Colorado after 7 years away, he expected a joyful reunion. Instead, he found silence. The driveway leading to Evelyn's house was nearly hidden beneath weeds. Snow drifted against the porch steps. Several shutters hung crooked from the walls. Nathan stepped out of his rental SUV and stared. This couldn't be right. The front door was locked, but the place felt abandoned. Dust coated the windows. The mailbox overflowed with old advertisements. His stomach tightened. He called his mother, straight to voicemail. Again, voicemail. The knot in his chest grew heavier. A neighboring couple recognized him almost immediately. "Nathan, is that really you?" He forced a smile and greeted them, then asked the question he never imagined asking. "Have you seen my mother?" The couple exchanged uneasy looks. "Not in a long time." "How long?" The husband hesitated. "Maybe a year, maybe more." Nathan felt cold despite the winter coat. "A year?" The woman lowered her eyes. "We thought she moved away." Nobody seemed certain. Nobody seemed concerned. As the afternoon faded, Nathan drove into town searching for answers. The sheriff's office offered little comfort. Sheriff Dalton reviewed a file and shrugged. No evidence of foul play. No signs of struggle. No criminal investigation. "You're saying she just vanished?" The sheriff leaned back in his chair. "Adults have the right to leave if they want. We received information suggesting she wanted privacy." "Information from who?" "Grant Mercer." Nathan left the building with anger building inside him. That evening he found Grant at a local restaurant. His stepbrother looked surprised, though not particularly happy, to see him. Nathan got straight to the point. "Where's Mom?" Grant sighed heavily. "Still doing this?" "Doing what?" "Acting like something terrible happened." "She left, Nathan. She wanted space without telling me." Grant shrugged. "You were halfway around the world." The answer felt rehearsed. Every so felt rehearsed. When Nathan pressed harder, Grant became defensive. "I spent years helping her while you were gone." "Helping her?" "Yeah, handling things. Taking her to appointments, managing problems. Then why did she disappear?" Grant's jaw tightened. "Maybe she got tired." "Of what?" Grant stood. "You should let it go." Nathan watched him walk away. For the first time, he felt certain that someone was hiding something. Back at the mountain house, he started looking through records. The inconsistencies appeared immediately. Utility bills were still being paid. Electricity remained active. Water service had never been disconnected. Yet nobody lived there. Even stranger, medical records showed Evelyn had abruptly stopped attending appointments she never used to miss. No forwarding address, no explanations, no farewell message. Nothing. The more Nathan looked, the less sense it made. Late that night, snow began falling again. The mountains disappeared behind curtains of white. Nathan sat beside the fireplace, staring at scattered papers spread across the table. The entire situation felt wrong. His mother was careful, predictable, responsible. She would never vanish without a word. Not willingly, not for a year, not from him. Near midnight, a sudden scratching sound broke the silence. Nathan looked toward the front door. The noise came again, slow, persistent scratch, scratch. He stood and crossed the room. Another scrape followed. When he opened the door, freezing air rushed inside. For a moment he saw nothing except swirling snow. Then movement appeared near the porch. A wolf, its gray fur was matted with snow. One hind leg looked injured. The animal stood several yards away. Watching him, neither moved. Nathan expected it to run. It didn't. Instead, the wounded wolf took a few limping steps forward. Its pale eyes never left his. Then it turned toward the dark wilderness beyond the property. A few seconds later it looked back at him again, as if waiting. Nathan felt an unexpected chill crawl up his spine. The wolf scratched once against the wooden porch post, then returned its gaze to him. And no matter how long Nathan stood there, the wounded wolf refused to leave. Nathan stood in the open doorway while snow drifted across the porch behind him. The wounded wolf remained where it was. Its fur was streaked with ice. One rear leg barely touched the ground. Yet despite the injury, the animal carried itself with strange determination. Nathan slowly crouched. The wolf did not growl. It did not retreat. For several long seconds they simply watched each other. Then the wolf turned toward the forest. It limped several yards into the darkness before stopping. Again it looked back. Waiting, Nathan rubbed a hand across his face. This was ridiculous. He was a trained engineer, not someone who chased signs and omens through the wilderness. His mother was missing. There had to be evidence somewhere. Documents, witnesses, financial records. Not a wolf. Yet as he stared into the snow-covered trees, a thought refused to leave him. Nothing else had produced answers. The sheriff dismissed him. Grant stonewalled him. Neighbors knew almost nothing. The trail had gone cold more than a year earlier. The wolf took another step into the forest, then another. Nathan exhaled heavily. "Fine," he muttered. He grabbed his heavy coat, flashlight, and truck keys. The wolf disappeared between the trees. By the time Nathan reached the edge of the property, he could barely see its shape moving through the snowfall. The cold hit immediately. Wind pushed loose snow across the ground. Branches creaked overhead. The mountains felt enormous at night. The wolf moved ahead of him at an oddly careful pace. Not fast, not slow. Whenever Nathan fell behind, it stopped and waited. Twice he considered turning around. The terrain grew rougher as the forest thickened. Snow covered fallen logs and hidden rocks. His boots slipped repeatedly. The practical part of his mind screamed that he was wasting time. But another part kept noticing things. Small things, unusual things. About 30 minutes into the hike, Nathan found the first sign. Near a cluster of pine trees, something disturbed the snow. He knelt and examined it. Tracks. Not animal tracks. Human. The impressions were faint and partially covered by fresh snowfall, but they were there. His pulse quickened. Someone had walked this route recently. The wolf stood 20 yards ahead, watching him. Nathan rose and followed. The forest became steeper. Snow-covered ridges rose around him. Several times he nearly lost sight of the animal. Each time it appeared again farther ahead. Always waiting, always watching. The farther they traveled, the stranger Nathan's unease became, because he kept finding evidence, broken branches cut cleanly by a tool, a section of brush deliberately cleared, a narrow path hidden beneath the snow. None of it belonged naturally in this remote part of the reserve. Someone had been here repeatedly, someone organized, someone careful. The realization made his heart pound. This wasn't random. Hours passed. The storm softened slightly. Moonlight filtered through the clouds. Nathan checked his watch. Nearly 2 a.m. His legs ached. His lungs burned from the cold. Then he saw something that stopped him completely. A scrap of blue fabric caught on a branch, weathered, faded, but recent enough to survive the winter. He pulled it free and studied it beneath the flashlight. The material looked familiar, very familiar. His mother owned a blue winter coat. The same shade, the same heavy fabric. Nathan stared at the torn piece for several seconds, then carefully folded it into his pocket. The wolf had already started moving again. Now Nathan followed without hesitation. Whatever waited ahead was connected. He could feel it. Another 20 minutes passed, the forest opened slightly, the slope flattened, and suddenly the wolf vanished. Nathan stopped. The silence felt immediate and unsettling. No movement, no sound, only wind brushing through the pines. He scanned the darkness. Nothing. For the first time all night, the animal was gone. A strange disappointment settled in his chest. Then his flashlight landed on something unexpected. Smoke, a thin ribbon rising through the trees. Nathan froze. He blinked once, then again. The smoke remained, not far away. His heartbeat accelerated. There shouldn't have been anyone out here. The reserve prohibited camping during winter. There were no cabins on any official map, yet smoke drifted steadily into the night sky. Nathan moved forward carefully. Every instinct sharpened. Snow crunched beneath his boots. The smell reached him next. Wood fire fresh. Recent someone was there. The trees gradually thinned, then he saw it. At first it looked like another shadow among the pines, a dark shape barely visible beneath layers of snow. Nathan stepped closer. The structure slowly emerged from the darkness. A shack. Small, hidden, almost invisible beneath branches and weathered tarps. His breath caught. No one would stumble across it by accident. The shelter sat inside a natural depression surrounded by dense trees. From a distance it blended completely into the landscape. The smoke rose from a crooked metal chimney. A faint orange glow flickered behind a frost-covered window. Nathan's pulse hammered. Every possibility crashed through his mind at once. A hunter, a squatter, a fugitive, or something far worse. The wolf reappeared near the tree line. It sat silently beside the shack, watching. Nathan stared at it. The animal looked exhausted, but somehow satisfied, as if it had completed a task. Snow drifted between them. Then the wolf slowly lowered itself onto the ground. Its injured legs stretched awkwardly beside it. Nathan took one cautious step toward the shelter, then another. The glow inside shifted. A shadow moved across the window. He stopped instantly. Someone was inside. Very slowly he approached the door. The wood looked ancient. The hinges rusted. The entire structure seemed one strong storm away from collapse. Yet someone had survived here. For how long he had no idea. Nathan reached the porch. The boards groaned softly beneath his weight. Inside, movements stopped. The silence felt heavy, like whoever was there had heard him. Nathan's hand hovered inches from the door. His mouth had gone dry. Every clue, every inconsistency, every lie, every missing year, all of it seemed to point here. The wolf remained motionless beside the trees, watching, waiting. Nathan finally raised his hand and knocked. A sharp sound echoed through the wilderness. Nothing happened. Then, from inside the shack, he heard something that made his blood run cold. An elderly woman's frightened voice. "Who's there?" Nathan's hand tightened around the flashlight. For a moment, he couldn't breathe. That voice, older, frailer, trembling with fear, but familiar, painfully familiar. "Mom?" he called through the door. Silence answered him. The orange glow inside flickered. Nathan took a step closer. "Mom, it's me. It's Nathan." Something moved inside. A chair scraped against a wooden floor. Then came a sharp intake of breath. "No." The voice sounded broken, disbelieving. Nathan felt his chest tighten. "Mom, open the door." Several seconds passed, long enough for doubt to creep in, long enough for him to wonder whether grief had finally pushed him into imagining things. Then the lock clicked. The door opened only a few inches. An elderly woman stood inside holding a lantern. Nathan stared. The world seemed to stop. Her hair had turned almost completely gray. Her face looked thinner. Deeper lines marked her cheeks and forehead, but her eyes were the same eyes that had looked at him every Christmas video call, the same eyes he had searched for in every old family photograph. Evelyn Mercer alive. The lantern slipped slightly in her hand. Nathan saw tears instantly fill her eyes. She looked at him as if she was seeing a ghost. "Nathan?" His throat closed. Yeah, the single word barely escaped. Then the door flew open. Evelyn reached for him. Nathan caught her before she stumbled. For several moments neither spoke. The years between them collapsed into silence and tears. He could feel how light she had become, how fragile. Not weak, never weak, but worn down, as if life had slowly carved pieces from her while nobody was watching. Finally she pulled back. Her hands touched his face. "You came home." The words shattered him. Nathan swallowed hard. "I've been looking everywhere." Evelyn's expression changed immediately. Fear replaced joy. She glanced behind him toward the dark forest. "You shouldn't be here." Nathan frowned. "What?" "You need to leave." The words made no sense. He looked past her into the cabin. The place was tiny. A single bed stood against one wall. A wood stove crackled quietly in the corner. Shelves held canned food, medicine bottles, and neatly folded blankets. Someone had worked hard to survive here, but barely. This wasn't living. This was hiding. Nathan stepped inside before she could stop him. The cabin smelled of smoke and pine. Everything looked organized, careful, temporary, like a person never intended to stay forever. "Mom, what happened?" Evelyn closed the door quickly. Her hands shook as she secured the lock. Then she looked toward the window. Again and again Nathan noticed. She was afraid. Not confused. Not unstable, afraid. The realization changed everything. He lowered his voice. "Who's threatening you?" Evelyn sat heavily in a chair near the stove. For a long moment she simply stared into the fire. When she finally spoke, her voice sounded exhausted. "Everyone thinks I disappeared." Nathan nodded. "They do." "Good," the answer stunned him. "What do you mean, good?" She looked up. "If people believe I vanished, they stop looking." Nathan stared. Nothing about this conversation matched what he'd expected. For more than a year he had imagined illness, memory loss, an accident. Not this. Never this. "Mom, start from the beginning." She remained silent. Nathan sat across from her. The cabin suddenly felt very small. Outside, wind brushed against the walls. Somewhere beyond the trees, the wounded wolf remained invisible in the darkness, waiting, guarding. Nathan wasn't sure which. Finally, Evelyn spoke. "It started after your father died." Nathan listened carefully. At first Grant helped. The name immediately made Nathan tense. He handled errands, bills, insurance paperwork. She paused. "I trusted him." Nathan said nothing. Then little things changed. Her eyes drifted toward the fire. He wanted access to accounts. "Which accounts?" "Mine." Nathan's jaw tightened. "Why?" He said it would make things easier. The explanation sounded familiar, too familiar. Grant had used the same phrase countless times over the years. Make things easier. Handle things locally. "Don't worry about it," Evelyn continued. "I didn't think much about it then, but later," she looked down, "later I realized he wasn't helping me manage my life." A painful smile crossed her face. He was slowly taking control of it. Nathan felt anger building. What exactly did he do? Everything gradually. She clasped her hands together. She started speaking for me. "To who?" "Doctors, bank employees, neighbors." Nathan leaned forward, and nobody questioned it. Evelyn laughed softly. A sad laugh. "The elderly become invisible sometimes." The words hung heavily between them. "When people decide you're old enough to be fragile, they stop asking what you think." Nathan looked around the cabin, at the blankets, the medicine, the worn furniture. His mother had been surviving alone while everyone else accepted a convenient story, including him. The guilt hit hard. "I should have come sooner." Evelyn immediately shook her head. "No, I should have." "No, Nathan." Her voice grew firmer, the first real strength he'd heard since arriving. "You were building your life while this happened. You didn't know." The problem was that she was right. He didn't know. Because he'd trusted. Trusted phone calls, trusted excuses, trusted family. And now his mother was living in a hidden cabin deep in the mountains. Nathan reached into his pocket. He pulled out the torn piece of blue fabric. Evelyn froze the moment she saw it. "Where did you get that? On the trail?" She took it carefully. Her fingers trembled. "That's mine." Nathan's pulse quickened. "The coat?" She nodded. "I lost that piece months ago." "Months." "Not years, months." Meaning she had been using that trail regularly, recently. Nathan studied her face. "How long have you been here?" Evelyn hesitated. Too long, long enough for Nathan to notice, long enough to know the answer mattered. Finally she whispered, 14 months. Nathan closed his eyes. 14 months. While the sheriff filed paperwork, while Grant claimed she wanted privacy, while neighbors assumed she'd moved away. 14 months. Then another realization struck him, a terrible one. "Mom," she looked up. "If you've been here 14 months, Nathan felt ice spread through his chest. Then who kept paying the utilities at your house? The color drained from Evelyn's face. For the first time since opening the door, she looked genuinely alarmed. Not frightened, not nervous, alarmed. Slowly, she stood. Then she crossed the room toward a wooden cabinet. From the bottom drawer she removed a weathered envelope. The moment Nathan saw it, he knew it wasn't random. Someone had hidden it carefully, protected it, saved it. Evelyn held the envelope tightly. Her hands trembled. "There are things I haven't told anyone." Nathan stared at the packet. "What things?" Evelyn looked directly into his eyes. Then she spoke the words that changed everything. "They didn't do this alone." Nathan stared at the envelope in his mother's hands. The fire crackled softly behind them, but the cabin suddenly felt colder. "What do you mean they?" he asked. Evelyn remained standing beside the cabinet. The envelope looked old. The edges were worn from being handled too many times. For several seconds she didn't answer. Then she slowly sat back down. Grant couldn't have done everything by himself. Nathan had suspected as much. The moment he learned utility bills were still being paid on an empty house, he knew someone else had helped maintain the illusion. But hearing his mother confirm it made the situation feel far more dangerous. "Who helped him?" Evelyn lowered her eyes. "At first I wasn't sure." "At first?" She nodded. "I spent months trying to understand what happened." Nathan leaned forward. "What happened, Mom?" Evelyn took a breath. "When your father died, I was grieving. I trusted people I shouldn't have trusted." The admission clearly hurt her. Nathan remained quiet. She needed to tell it her own way. "Grant started accompanying me to appointments." "The medical appointments?" "Yes." "Why?" "Because he said he was worried about me." Nathan clenched his jaw. Everything sounded reasonable, which made it worse. The most damaging betrayals rarely began with obvious cruelty. They began with trust. "He told doctors I was forgetting things." Nathan frowned. "Were you?" "No." The answer came immediately, firmly. "I was grieving. That's not the same thing." Nathan believed her. There was nothing confused about the woman sitting across from him. Exhausted, yes. Frightened, yes. But not confused. Evelyn continued. "At first I didn't know what he was saying behind my back." Her eyes drifted toward the window. "The first warning came from my bank." Nathan sat up. "What happened?" A teller I had known for years pulled me aside. The memory clearly remained vivid. She asked if I was comfortable with Grant speaking for me. Nathan felt his stomach tighten. "Speaking for you how? Like I wasn't there." The words hung in the air. "Whenever we visited together, he answered every question." Nathan looked away briefly. He could picture it. A grieving widow, an attentive son, nobody questioning the arrangement, nobody asking whether Evelyn actually wanted help. The realization made him angry. Not only at Grant, at everyone who found it easier to believe an older woman was declining than to ask her opinion. What happened after that? The bank teller suggested I review my paperwork. Evelyn paused. When I did, I found forms I didn't remember signing. Nathan's pulse quickened. "What kind of forms?" "Authorization forms." His chest tightened. "Financial authorization?" She nodded. "I revoked them immediately." Nathan stared. "Grant let you do that?" A bitter smile crossed her face. For a little while, the answer sent a chill through him. Evelyn carefully opened the envelope. Inside were several folded documents. She removed one and handed it across the table. Nathan unfolded it. The paper was a copy, not an original. But the contents were clear enough. A guardianship evaluation request. His eyes narrowed. "What is this?" Evelyn watched him carefully. 6 months after your father died, someone petitioned to have me evaluated." Nathan looked up. His voice dropped. "For mental incompetence?" She nodded once. The room fell silent. Nathan read the document again, then again. The petitioner name appeared exactly where he expected. Grant Mercer. His hands tightened around the paper. "He tried to have you declared incapable?" "He tried." Nathan felt anger building fast. Dangerous anger. "Did it go through?" "No." Relief flashed through him. Briefly. Then Evelyn reached into the envelope again. She removed another document. This one looked newer, official, stamped. Nathan took it. His eyes moved quickly across the page, then stopped. His heartbeat accelerated. Because Grant's name wasn't the only one there. A second signature appeared near the bottom. Someone endorsing the request. Someone supporting the claim. Nathan read the name twice. He recognized it immediately. Richard Bell. The family's longtime attorney, the man who handled property matters for decades. The man Nathan had trusted almost as much as family. No. The word escaped before he could stop it. Evelyn nodded slowly. "That's what I said." Nathan looked at the signature again. Richard Bell had attended family holidays, celebrated birthdays, handled estate paperwork after his father's death. He wasn't some stranger, he was part of their lives. Why would he do this? I don't know. Nathan looked unconvinced. Neither did she. The explanation felt incomplete. There had to be more, a lot more. He carefully placed the papers on the table. What happened after this? Evelyn hesitated. Then she stood and walked toward the stove. For a moment, Nathan thought she was avoiding the question. Instead, she opened a small metal box resting beside the firewood. Inside were more documents, more copies, more records. She had been collecting evidence for 14 months, alone. The realization broke something inside him. While he attended conferences and negotiated contracts overseas, his mother had been quietly building a case against the people closest to her. With no lawyer, no investigator, no family, just determination. She carried several papers back to the table. I started keeping everything. Nathan nodded. Good. It was exactly what he would have advised. Every receipt, every statement, every letter, every discrepancy. Evidence mattered, especially when powerful people controlled the narrative. One document immediately caught his attention. A utility statement, his mother's address, the abandoned house. Services active, monthly payments every month, even after she vanished. Nathan looked closer, then froze. The payment account number appeared at the bottom. He recognized it, not fully, just enough. The last 4 digits. His stomach dropped. Mom Evelyn watched his face carefully. What is it? Nathan didn't answer immediately. His eyes remained locked on the page, because he had seen those digits before. Recently, very recently, at Grant's house, on a stack of unopened mail sitting near the kitchen counter. At the time it meant nothing. Now it meant everything. Someone had been paying those bills deliberately. Not out of kindness, out of strategy. The empty house needed to look occupied. The illusion needed maintenance. Nathan slowly folded the paper. The realization changed the entire picture. This wasn't negligence. This wasn't a family misunderstanding. It was concealment, careful, intentional concealment. He looked up. I'm not leaving you here. Evelyn immediately shook her head. No, Mom, no. The force in her voice surprised him. You don't understand. Then help me understand. Fear returned to her face, real fear, the kind that comes from experience, not imagination. You finding me changes everything. Nathan waited. Evelyn's eyes moved toward the door, toward the darkness outside, toward the forest. Then she whispered something so quietly he almost missed it. They'll know. Nathan's pulse quickened. Who? Before she could answer, a sudden sound echoed outside. Both of them froze. Footsteps, not animal movement, not wind, footsteps, slow, heavy, crunching through fresh snow. The sound stopped just beyond the cabin wall. Nathan stood instantly. Every muscle tightened. The cabin became silent. Even the fire seemed quieter. Then came the unmistakable beam of a flashlight sliding across the frosted window. Someone was outside, and whoever it was had found the cabin. Nathan moved without thinking. He grabbed the envelope from the table and slid it inside his coat, just as another beam of light swept across the cabin window. Evelyn had gone pale. Turn off the lantern, she whispered. Nathan crossed the room and lowered the flame immediately. The cabin dropped into near darkness. Only the glow from the stove remained. Outside, snow crunched again. One step, then another. Whoever was out there wasn't passing through. They were approaching deliberately. Nathan felt every muscle tighten. The footsteps stopped beside the wall. A shadow moved across the frosted glass. Then came a knock. 3 slow taps, not aggressive, not hesitant, almost familiar. Nathan looked at his mother. Evelyn stared at the door like she already knew who it was. The silence stretched. Then a man's voice came through the wood. Nathan frowned. The voice wasn't Grant's. It sounded older. Are you in there? Evelyn finally exhaled, a shaky breath. It's okay, she said quietly. Nathan didn't move. It's okay, she repeated. This time she stood and walked toward the door. The lock clicked. Cold air rushed inside as the door opened. A man in his late 60s stood outside holding a flashlight. Snow covered his shoulders. His beard was white. His face looked weathered by decades of mountain winters. The relief in his eyes was immediate. There you are, he said. Then he noticed Nathan. The relief vanished. His expression sharpened. Who's this? Nathan stepped forward. I'm Nathan Mercer. The man's eyes widened. For a moment nobody spoke. Then he lowered the flashlight. So you finally came home. Nathan immediately noticed something. The man wasn't surprised that Evelyn had a son. He wasn't surprised Nathan existed. He sounded like someone who had been expecting this moment for a long time. Evelyn closed the door behind him. Caleb helped me. Nathan looked between them. Caleb removed his gloves and nodded politely. Not just me, he sat near the stove. The movement suggested familiarity, like he'd entered this cabin hundreds of times before. Nathan remained standing, still cautious, still uncertain. Evelyn noticed, he owns the cabin. That caught Nathan off guard. Caleb smiled faintly. Owned. He looked around the room. Now I just keep fixing things that should have fallen apart years ago. The attempt at humor didn't quite land. The tension remained. Nathan sat slowly. How do you know my mother? Caleb exchanged a glance with Evelyn, then answered. My wife and Evelyn worked together years ago. Nathan nodded, nothing suspicious there. Yet something still felt incomplete, because Caleb clearly knew far more than he was saying. The older man rubbed his hands near the stove. I brought supplies. He pointed toward a backpack near the door. Medicine, canned food, batteries. Nathan's chest tightened. This stranger had been helping his mother survive while her own family searched nowhere. The shame stung Caleb seemed to notice. You didn't know? Nathan looked away. No. The older man nodded. That's what she always said. Nathan frowned. What do you mean? Caleb hesitated, then looked toward Evelyn. She gave a small nod. Permission. The gesture didn't escape Nathan. Whatever happened here, they had built trust together. A lot of trust. Caleb sighed. For months she defended you. Nathan swallowed. Even after everything, especially after everything, the words hit harder than expected. Outside, wind rattled the cabin walls. Inside, nobody spoke for several moments. Finally, Nathan asked the question that had been building since arriving. If you knew where she was, why didn't you call me? Caleb looked directly at him. Because she wouldn't let me. Nathan turned toward his mother. Evelyn stared into the fire. I thought I was protecting you. Protecting me from what? She didn't answer immediately. When she finally did, her voice sounded tired. From becoming part of it, Nathan felt frustration rising. Mom, I already am part of it. Her eyes met his. Pain filled them. The kind of pain that came from knowing someone you loved had already been hurt. You don't understand how much they prepared. The statement hung heavily in the room. Nathan leaned forward. What does that mean? Evelyn looked at Caleb again. The second time she'd done that. The second time Nathan noticed both of them carrying knowledge he didn't have. Caleb finally spoke. It means they didn't just take control of her finances. Nathan felt his stomach tighten. What else? Caleb stood and walked toward a shelf near the bed. From behind several books, he removed a folder, thicker than the envelope. Far thicker. He handed it to Nathan. The folder contained copies, medical notes, bank correspondence, letters, forms, pages and pages of records. Nathan flipped through them quickly, then slower still, because a disturbing pattern emerged. Different institutions, different dates, different people, yet the same narrative appeared again and again. Memory concerns, cognitive decline, decision-making issues, supervision recommended. His pulse quickened. Someone had spent years building a paper trail, not proving Evelyn was incapable, suggesting it, planting it. One record mentioned concerns from a physician's office, another referenced recommendations from legal counsel, another documented conversations with financial advisors. Individually, none of it looked devastating. Together, it formed something dangerous, a story, a believable story. Nathan slowly lowered the papers. Oh my God, nobody responded, because everyone knew he finally understood. This wasn't one forged document. This wasn't one fraudulent signature. This was a campaign. Slow, patient, calculated, years in the making. Nathan looked at the folder again. Then something caught his eye. One page near the back, a legal filing, different from the others, more recent. His heartbeat accelerated. The heading referenced estate planning, property transfer review. Nathan turned the page, then froze. A name appeared in the signature section. Not Grant, not Richard Bell, someone else, someone Nathan recognized immediately. His hands began to shake. Caleb frowned. What is it? Nathan stared at the signature. The ink, the date, the witness certification. Everything looked authentic. Everything looked impossible, because the document had been witnessed and approved by Margaret Sloan, the same retired judge who had personally reassured Nathan over dinner 2 years earlier that Evelyn's affairs were secure. The same woman who had been one of his late father's closest friends. The same woman who publicly spoke about protecting vulnerable seniors. Nathan slowly looked up. The room had gone silent, and for the first time since finding his mother, he realized the truth might reach far beyond Grant Mercer, far beyond a family betrayal. Someone powerful had helped build the lie, and suddenly he wasn't sure how many people he could trust anymore. Nathan barely slept. The storm continued through most of the night, rattling the cabin walls and pushing snow against the windows. Caleb eventually left before dawn, promising to return in 2 days with additional supplies. Before leaving, he made Nathan promise something in return. "Don't confront anyone yet." Nathan agreed, but only because he knew Caleb was right. The moment Grant realized Evelyn had been found, everything would change. Evidence could disappear. Records could vanish. Stories could suddenly become coordinated. By sunrise, Nathan had already made a decision. He wasn't leaving empty-handed. While Evelyn prepared coffee over the stove, Nathan carefully photographed every document in the folder, every page, every signature, every note. Then he uploaded copies to secure cloud storage. Twice. When he finished, he handed the folder back to his mother. "Nobody gets to erase this." Evelyn looked at him for a long moment. Then she nodded. The simple gesture carried more trust than words ever could. A few hours later, Nathan drove back into town. Leaving Evelyn alone felt wrong, almost unbearable, but hiding forever wouldn't protect her. Finding proof might. Before leaving, he installed a small motion camera near the cabin entrance using equipment from his SUV. It wasn't perfect, but it was something, a precaution, a line in the snow. By late morning, he sat inside a coffee shop 2 towns away, reviewing photographs of the documents on his laptop. The deeper he looked, the stranger the everything became. Grant appeared repeatedly. Richard Bell appeared repeatedly. Several financial consultants appeared once or twice, yet one name bothered him more than all the others: Margaret Sloan, the retired judge. Her involvement made no sense. She had a reputation built over decades: volunteer work, community service, senior advocacy. People trusted her. Nathan had trusted her. So why was her signature attached to paperwork that helped create a false narrative about Evelyn's mental fitness? The question wouldn't leave him alone. Finally, he picked up his phone. Margaret answered on the 3rd ring. "Nathan?" Her surprise sounded genuine. "Good morning." He kept his tone neutral. "Can we meet?" A brief silence followed. Then she agreed. 2 hours later, Nathan sat across from her in a quiet restaurant overlooking the mountains. Margaret looked exactly as he remembered. Sharp eyes, perfect posture, the confidence of someone accustomed to authority. After a few minutes of small talk, Nathan slid a copy of the document across the table. The moment she saw it, something changed, only slightly, but Nathan noticed a tightening around her eyes, a hesitation, tiny, almost invisible. "What is this?" she asked. "You tell me." Margaret studied the page, then looked up. "I remember this." Nathan leaned forward, then explain it. She set the document down carefully. "I wasn't approving guardianship." "What were you approving?" "A procedural review." The answer came quickly, too quickly. "Prepared." Nathan felt it immediately. Margaret folded her hands. "Grant requested an evaluation process." "Based on what?" She hesitated. "Concerns." Nathan almost laughed. The same vague word again, concerns. Everyone used it, nobody defined it. "What concerns?" Margaret looked uncomfortable. "For the first time all afternoon, he believed your mother was becoming vulnerable." Nathan stared. "Did you?" Margaret didn't answer immediately. Instead, she asked a question. "When was the last time you visited her before she disappeared?" The words landed hard, because Nathan knew the answer. Too long, far too long. Margaret seemed to read the guilt on his face. "I wasn't there every day either," she said quietly, "but Grant was." Nathan remained silent. Something about her tone felt different now, less defensive, more complicated. She looked out the window briefly. When people become isolated, situations aren't always as obvious as they seem. Nathan frowned. "What does that mean?" Margaret looked back at him. "I mean, there were things I didn't know." The statement caught him off guard, not because of what she said, because of what she didn't. Nathan studied her carefully. "You regret something." A shadow crossed her face. For several seconds she said nothing. Then she nodded, once, barely. "I should have asked more questions." Nathan felt a shift, small but important. This wasn't someone proudly defending the past. This was someone carrying guilt. That didn't make her innocent, but it changed the picture. Before he could ask another question, Margaret reached into her purse. She removed a business card. A name was written on the back. "Who is this?" Nathan asked. Someone who tried to stop part of this. Nathan's pulse quickened. The card belonged to a retired attorney. Samuel Harlan, a name Nathan had never heard before. Margaret slid the card across the table. He won't talk to many people. Will he talk to me? Her expression darkened. He might. Nathan looked at the card, another lead, another piece, another layer. As he stood to leave, Margaret spoke again. Nathan, he stopped. She looked older suddenly, not physically, emotionally, like someone who had spent months wrestling with her conscience. Be careful who you trust. The warning sounded sincere, and that frightened him more than anything she'd said all afternoon. By evening, Nathan tracked down Samuel Harlan. The retired attorney lived alone in a modest house outside Durango. No receptionist, no office, no sign on the mailbox. Just a weathered home and a man who looked tired of carrying old secrets. Samuel listened quietly while Nathan explained. Then Nathan showed him the documents. The reaction was immediate. Not surprise. Recognition. Samuel leaned back heavily. I knew this would come back one day. Nathan's heartbeat quickened. You knew? Samuel removed his glasses. They approached me first. Nathan froze. Who did? Grant and Richard Bell. The room became silent. Samuel rubbed his forehead. They wanted support for a guardianship petition. Nathan sat forward. What did you tell them? No. The answer came instantly, firmly. Samuel looked angry even now. Years later, I refused. Nathan felt something shift again. For the first time, he had proof that not everyone stayed silent. Someone had pushed back. Someone had recognized what was happening. Why? Samuel laughed bitterly. Because your mother wasn't incompetent. Nathan felt relief, validation. A professional had seen exactly what Evelyn claimed. Then Samuel's expression changed. The bitterness disappeared. Something else replaced it. Concern. Real concern. That's not the part you should be worried about. Nathan's stomach tightened. What part should I be worried about? Samuel stared at him for several long seconds. Then he stood and walked toward a filing cabinet. From the bottom drawer he removed a thick manila folder, older than the others. Sealed. Untouched for years. Nathan watched carefully. Samuel placed it on the desk between them. His face had gone pale. I kept this because something never felt right. Nathan looked down at the folder. A handwritten label covered the front. One name, Evelyn Mercer, and beneath it 5 words that instantly made his blood run cold. Estate revision, confidential dispute file. Nathan stared at the folder for several seconds before touching it. The label alone was enough to raise a dozen questions. Estate revision. Confidential dispute. None of that matched the story Grant had been telling. According to Grant, Evelyn had wanted privacy. She had chosen to disappear. She had walked away from everyone and everything. People who voluntarily disappeared didn't usually leave behind confidential estate disputes. Samuel Harlan watched him carefully. Open it. Nathan broke the seal. Inside sat nearly 2 inches of paperwork, letters, legal notes, meeting summaries, property assessments, handwritten annotations, years of history compressed into a single file. Nathan immediately noticed something: the dates. Most of the documents clustered around a period roughly 18 months before Evelyn vanished. Something significant had happened then, something big enough to trigger lawyers, financial reviews, and estate revisions. What am I looking for? Nathan asked. Samuel leaned back. The beginning. Nathan started reading. The first few documents outlined routine estate planning after his father's death. Nothing unusual. Property transfers, tax considerations, asset management. Then he reached a letter. His mother's signature appeared at the bottom. The date was 14 months before she disappeared. Nathan slowed down. The letter requested a revision to her existing will. His heartbeat quickened. He turned the page. Then another. The changes were substantial, very substantial. A large section of land previously scheduled to pass equally through family channels had been reassigned. Several investment accounts had been modified. A trust structure had been rewritten. Nathan frowned. None of the changes benefited him. That surprised him, because the obvious explanation would have been favoritism. Instead, the revisions appeared focused on preserving Evelyn's long-term independence, healthcare protections, financial oversight safeguards, restrictions against unilateral control. The documents looked less like an inheritance plan and more like a defense system someone had wanted in place. Why was she changing everything? Nathan asked. Samuel folded his arms because she got scared. Nathan looked up. Scared of what? Samuel hesitated, then answered, Grant. The room fell silent. Nathan wasn't shocked anymore, not exactly, but hearing it stated so directly carried weight. A legal professional had documented it, recorded it, preserved it. Did she tell you that? More than once. Nathan looked back at the file. A note clipped to one page caught his attention. Client expresses concern regarding increasing financial pressure from family member. No names, no accusations, just enough. Just enough to establish a pattern. Nathan kept reading. The deeper he went, the more uncomfortable he became. Not because of what he discovered about Grant, because of what he discovered about himself. There were references to conversations Evelyn had wanted to have with him. Several attempts to schedule discussions while he was overseas, letters drafted, calls postponed, messages never delivered. Nathan felt something twist inside his chest. He remembered those years, the constant travel, the endless deadlines, the belief that there would always be more time later, more visits, more conversations, more chances. Now he wasn't so sure. Samuel seemed to understand what he was thinking. You weren't the problem. Nathan looked up sharply. Samuel shook his head. I've seen enough families to know the difference. Nathan remained silent. The older attorney continued. Being absent isn't the same as being malicious. The distinction mattered, but it didn't erase the guilt. Nothing could. Nathan returned to the documents. Then he found something that changed everything again. A financial report. Recent, far more recent than the others. His eyes moved across the numbers, then stopped. A debt summary. Grant Mercer. Nathan stared. The amount felt unreal. Business loans, personal guarantees, outstanding liabilities. Several failed commercial developments, nearly $6 million. Nathan read the figure twice. Then a third time, his pulse accelerated. Now the picture looked different, much different. This wasn't simple greed. This was desperation, financial collapse, a man drowning. And drowning people sometimes pulled others down with them. Did Evelyn know about this? Nathan asked. Samuel nodded. Eventually, Nathan held up the report. This explains motive. Part of it. Nathan frowned. Part of it? Samuel's expression darkened. There are emotional motives and financial motives. Nathan waited. Most people only see one. The attorney stood and walked toward the window. Snow drifted outside. The mountains beyond looked cold and distant. When your father died, Evelyn became the center of everything. Nathan listened. The money, the property, the decisions, the future. Samuel turned back toward him. Some people accepted that, and some didn't. Nathan thought immediately of Grant, the resentment, the defensiveness, the strange hostility during their conversation. It hadn't sounded like a man merely protecting his mother's wishes. It sounded like a man protecting something else, something personal. Samuel returned to the desk. There was always tension. What kind of tension? The attorney sighed. The kind that builds quietly for years. Nathan sensed another layer approaching, another hidden door, another secret. Samuel opened a side compartment in the folder. Several items slid out, photographs, old correspondence, meeting notes. One photograph immediately caught Nathan's attention. 3 adults standing together outside a ranch house. His father, Evelyn, Grant. Nathan studied the image. Nothing seemed unusual. Then Samuel handed him a letter. The paper looked decades old, unsent, never mailed. The handwriting belonged to Evelyn. Nathan recognized it instantly. He began reading. Halfway through he stopped. His stomach tightened. The letter wasn't addressed to him. It wasn't addressed to Grant. It was addressed to Richard Bell, the family attorney. The same man whose signature appeared throughout the guardianship paperwork. The same man Samuel had already identified as part of the problem. Nathan continued reading. The contents weren't accusations, they were concerns. Evelyn repeatedly referenced misunderstandings, favoritism, old resentment, attempts at reconciliation. The letter sounded like someone desperately trying to prevent a family fracture before it became permanent. But one sentence stood out, one sentence underlined in pen. Grant believes I chose Nathan over him long ago, and I no longer know how to convince him otherwise. Nathan slowly lowered the page. The room suddenly felt smaller. The statement didn't excuse anything. It didn't justify what happened, but it changed the emotional landscape, because now there was history behind the anger. History no one had talked about. History that predated the missing money, the guardianship efforts, the disappearance. Samuel watched him carefully. I told you this wasn't only about money. Nathan nodded slowly. For the first time, he believed it. The debt explained urgency. The letter explained bitterness. Together, they created something far more dangerous, a motive with roots. Nathan looked through the remaining contents. Most appeared ordinary. Then he noticed something unusual, a gap. Several pages were missing. The page numbering made it obvious. Document 14, document 15, then suddenly document 19. Nathan looked up. Where are the others? Samuel's face tightened. Nathan immediately knew he had found something important. What was removed? The attorney didn't answer, not right away. Instead, he opened a drawer beneath the desk. From inside, he pulled a small, sealed envelope. Unlike the others, this one carried no label, no case number, no legal notation, just a date. Nathan stared. The date matched the week before Evelyn vanished. Samuel placed the envelope between them. His voice dropped. Those missing pages were attached to this. Nathan felt his pulse hammering. What is it? Samuel looked genuinely troubled, more troubled than at any point since their meeting began. I never proved it. Nathan waited. But if I'm right, the attorney stopped, his eyes fixed on the envelope. Someone created an entirely new will. Silence filled the room. Nathan stared at the sealed packet, then at the date, then back at Samuel, and suddenly, finding his mother no longer felt like the end of the mystery. It felt like the beginning. Nathan stared at the sealed envelope. For several seconds, neither man spoke. The late afternoon sunlight had faded, leaving Samuel's office wrapped in long shadows. The folder, the missing pages, the debt reports, all of it suddenly seemed connected by something larger than simple financial manipulation. A new will. If Samuel was right, everything changed. Why didn't you open it? Nathan finally asked. Samuel looked tired, older than before. Because I never legally possessed the original file. Nathan frowned. Then how did you get this? It was delivered anonymously. That answer only deepened the mystery. Samuel leaned back. It arrived 2 weeks after Evelyn disappeared. Nathan's pulse quickened. Who sent it? I never found out. The attorney paused. But whoever mailed it wanted me to know something wasn't right. Nathan looked down at the envelope again. Someone inside the system had doubts. Someone had risked exposure. The question was why. Samuel carefully pushed the envelope across the desk. You should take it. Nathan hesitated. If this becomes evidence, it already is. The older attorney's voice was firm. I kept copies of everything important years ago. Nathan nodded slowly. Then he slipped the envelope into his briefcase. The moment he did, his phone vibrated. One text message from Caleb. Call me immediately. Nathan's stomach tightened. He looked up at Samuel. I need to go. The attorney's expression darkened. Something wrong? Nathan was already standing. I don't know yet. The drive back toward the mountains felt endless. Twilight settled across the landscape. Snow reflected the fading light. Nathan called Cape twice before finally reaching him. The older man answered immediately. Where are you? About 40 minutes away. A brief silence followed. Then Caleb said something that made Nathan grip the steering wheel tighter. Someone was asking questions. Nathan's heartbeat accelerated. Who? I don't know. Tell me exactly what happened. Caleb exhaled heavily. This afternoon a truck came through town. Nathan listened carefully. 2 men. Locals? No, that answer mattered. In small mountain communities, people noticed outsiders, especially during winter. They were asking about old cabins. Nathan felt cold despite the truck's heater. Did they mention Evelyn? No. Then why are you worried? Caleb hesitated. Because they asked about me. Nathan's pulse increased. That wasn't random, not even close. He glanced into the rearview mirror. The highway behind him remained empty. Did they find the cabin? I don't think so. The uncertainty bothered him. After ending the call, Nathan drove faster. His thoughts raced. Someone was moving. Someone was searching. The timing couldn't be ignored. Not after years of silence. Not now. Not after he had returned. The cabin finally appeared shortly after dark. Nathan parked quickly and stepped into the snow. The motion camera remained attached near the entrance. Good. At least nobody had tampered with it. Inside, Evelyn looked relieved the moment she saw him. Then she noticed his expression. What happened? Nathan placed the briefcase on the table. A lot. For the next hour, he explained everything. Margaret Sloan, Samuel Harlan, the financial records, Grant's debts, the missing pages, the possibility of a second will. Evelyn listened quietly. Occasionally she closed her eyes. Not because she was surprised, because pieces were finally confirming suspicions she had carried alone for years. When Nathan finished, the cabin fell silent. The fire crackled softly. Outside, wind brushed through the trees. Then Evelyn spoke. "I never changed the will." Nathan looked up. "What? The final version?" She folded her hands together. "I discussed changes." Nathan frowned. "Samuel's file confirms that. But I never signed a completed revision." The statement landed heavily. Nathan immediately understood the implication. If a new will existed, someone had created it after the process collapsed, or after Evelyn disappeared. Neither possibility was good. "Are you certain?" "Absolutely." Nathan believed her. The certainty in her voice left little room for doubt. Then something else occurred to him. Something he should have asked sooner. "Mom." She looked at him. "When was the last time you saw Richard Bell?" Her expression changed immediately, a flash of memory, pain, disappointment. 3 days before I left." Nathan sat forward. "What happened?" Evelyn stared into the flames. For a moment he thought she wouldn't answer. Then she did. "He came to the house." Nathan waited. He wasn't alone. His pulse quickened. "Who was with him?" Evelyn shook her head. "I don't know." The answer frustrated her as much as him. I had never seen the man before. Nathan remained silent. He stayed outside. While Richard came in, she nodded, and Evelyn's face tightened. "He wanted me to sign something." The room suddenly felt smaller. Nathan's heartbeat accelerated. "What kind of document?" "I don't know." "What do you mean you don't know?" "He wouldn't let me read the full file." Nathan stared. The statement sounded unbelievable, yet entirely believable at the same time. Predators relied on urgency, confusion, pressure, especially when dealing with older people. What happened next? Evelyn looked away. I refused. Nathan felt relief, briefly. Then she continued. "That's when Richard got angry." The words shocked him. Patient, polished, professional, the man everyone trusted. Nathan had never once imagined him losing control. But Evelyn sounded certain. "He told me I was making things difficult." Nathan clenched his jaw. "What else?" Evelyn hesitated. Longer this time. When she finally spoke, her voice dropped. "He said if I didn't cooperate, everything would become complicated." The sentence lingered in the air, a warning, almost a threat. Nathan looked down at the sealed envelope inside his briefcase. A new will, a mystery man, a pressured signature. The pieces were moving closer together, but one question still remained. Why? Why risk everything for Evelyn's estate? The answer couldn't be just money. Not anymore. There was another layer, another secret, something older, something personal. As the evening deepened, Nathan decided to review the motion camera footage, mostly out of caution, partly to reassure himself. He connected the device to his laptop and began scrolling through the recordings. Hours of empty snow, wind, trees, nothing unusual. Then he stopped, a timestamp from the previous afternoon. Before he had returned from meeting Samuel, someone appeared on screen. Nathan froze. The figure stood at the edge of the trees, too far away for facial details, but close enough for one thing. The person wasn't looking for shelter, wasn't hiking, wasn't passing through. They were watching the cabin. Nathan zoomed in, the image blurred, pixelated. Still, something emerged, a shape, a detail, a distinctive object hanging from the person's neck. Nathan's breath caught, because he recognized it instantly, a silver medallion. One his father had once given to only 3 people: Nathan, Evelyn, and Grant Mercer. The figure watching the cabin was wearing one. Nathan replayed the footage 6 times. Each viewing produced the same result. The figure remained too distant for identification. The face never became visible. The body shape revealed nothing useful. But the silver medallion was unmistakable. His father had commissioned only 3 of them decades earlier, custom-made, identical. One for himself, one for Evelyn, one for Grant. Nathan never received one. At the time, nobody thought much about it. Now he did. Because if the figure in the woods wore Grant's medallion, there were only 2 possibilities. Grant was watching the cabin, or someone wanted Nathan to believe he was. Neither option felt reassuring. Evelyn watched the footage quietly. Then she surprised him. "That isn't Grant." Nathan looked up. "You're sure?" She nodded. "Grant stands differently." The answer sounded strange at first. Then Nathan realized she was speaking as a mother. Mothers noticed things other people missed. Habits, movements, posture, small details accumulated over decades. He leans on his left side when he walks. Nathan looked back at the screen. The figure favored the right, not the left. A small detail, yet suddenly important. If it's not Grant, neither finished the sentence. Because they both understood what it meant. Another player, another layer, another person who knew exactly where Evelyn was hiding. Nathan immediately copied the footage onto 3 separate drives. One remained with him. One stayed hidden inside the cabin. The third went into a waterproof container beneath a loose floorboard. He wasn't taking chances anymore. After everything he'd discovered, losing evidence wasn't an option. The following morning brought another surprise. Caleb arrived earlier than expected, and he wasn't alone. A woman stepped from the passenger side of his truck. She looked to be in her 70s. Strong posture, sharp eyes, no wasted movements. The moment Evelyn saw her, she stood. Ruth, the women embraced. Nathan immediately recognized genuine affection. Not casual friendship, something deeper, something forged through hardship. Inside the cabin, introductions were brief. Ruth Bennett had been a county records clerk before retirement. More importantly, she had been Evelyn's friend for over 20 years. When coffee was served and everyone settled around the table, Ruth got straight to the point. I heard Nathan found the dispute file. Nathan nodded. How? Ruth exchanged a look with Caleb. Because Samuel called me. Nathan wasn't sure whether to feel relieved or alarmed. The circle of people aware of the situation kept growing. Yet every new person seemed connected by the same thing: guilt, regret, or unfinished business. Ruth leaned forward. You need to understand something. Nathan listened. Most people weren't helping Grant. Then what were they doing? Her expression darkened. They were convincing themselves everything was normal. That answer landed harder than expected. Because it felt true, not conspiracy, not dozens of villains. Something worse. People choosing comfort over questions. Ruth continued. When someone repeatedly says an older person is confused, eventually others stop challenging the story. Evelyn stared into her coffee. Nathan felt anger rise again, not explosive anger. The slower kind, the kind that stayed. Did anyone ever try to contact me? He asked. The question escaped before he could stop it. Silence followed. Ruth looked down. Caleb looked away. Neither reaction helped. Nathan felt his stomach tighten. What? Ruth sighed heavily. There was an attempt. The cabin suddenly felt small. What kind of attempt? She stood and walked toward her bag. From inside she removed a worn folder. The sight immediately reminded Nathan of Samuel's file. Another collection, another archive, another piece of the truth. Ruth handed him a document. He recognized the email address instantly, his own. Nathan's pulse accelerated. The message had been sent nearly 15 months earlier. Subject line urgent, regarding Evelyn Mercer. He frowned. I never got this. I know. Nathan looked up sharply. What do you mean you know? Ruth pointed toward the printout. A second page sat behind it. A delivery failure notice. The email had bounced. Nathan studied it carefully, then froze. The address wasn't his. It was one letter off. A simple mistake, an accidental typo, or something else. His chest tightened. Who's this? Ruth hesitated, then answered, Your mother. The cabin fell silent. Nathan stared at the paper. Evelyn looked equally shocked. I don't remember that. Ruth nodded. You wrote several. Several. The word hit hard. Not one attempt, multiple attempts. Nathan turned the pages. 5 messages, different dates, different wording, all undelivered, all unsuccessful. His vision blurred slightly, because every message carried the same emotional undertone. Not desperation, hope. Evelyn had been trying to reach him, again and again, and none of it reached him. Nathan rubbed his forehead. A painful thought emerged. What if everything would have been different? What if one message had arrived? One phone call, one warning, one conversation. Ruth seemed to recognize where his thoughts were heading. She gently touched his arm. Don't do that. Nathan looked at her. Do what? Rewrite the past. The words settled quietly between them. No accusation, no judgment, just truth. Nathan looked away. She was right. The guilt would consume him if he let it. The past couldn't be repaired, only the future. For the next hour, they reviewed records together. Ruth's knowledge proved invaluable. She remembered filing dates, property transfers, meeting schedules, things others had forgotten. Then she mentioned something unexpected. A storage unit. Nathan looked up immediately. What storage unit? Evelyn frowned. I don't have a storage unit. Ruth nodded. Not anymore, now everyone was paying attention. The retired clerk reached into her folder. Another document emerged. County property records, rental agreements, archived receipts. Nathan studied them carefully. Then his pulse quickened. The unit had been leased under Evelyn's name 3 months before she disappeared. Closed 2 weeks afterward, he looked at his mother. Recognition slowly appeared on her face. "Oh," Nathan leaned forward. "What?" Evelyn's expression changed, confusion mixed with memory. "I remember now." The room became completely silent. It was Richard's idea. Nathan felt his heartbeat accelerate. "Why?" He said some family records needed secure storage. Every person at the table understood the significance immediately. Family records, estate disputes, will revisions, legal files, the exact subjects appearing throughout the investigation. "Where was it?" Nathan asked. Ruth answered before Evelyn could. She already knew, outside Denver. Nathan stood. The decision came instantly, no debate, no hesitation. If anything remained inside that storage unit, he needed to know. But Ruth's expression remained troubled. "There's something else." Nathan stopped. "What?" She slid one final document across the table. An access log, storage facility records, every entry, every visit, every authorized person. Nathan looked down, his pulse hammered, because the final recorded access occurred 6 days after Evelyn vanished. And according to the signature on the log, the person who entered the unit wasn't Richard Bell. It wasn't Grant Mercer. It wasn't Evelyn. It was someone using Nathan Mercer's name. The storage facility records became the final thread that unraveled everything. The person who had entered the Denver storage unit using Nathan's identity had not been Grant. It had been Richard Bell. Security footage, retained far longer than anyone expected, eventually confirmed it. The retired attorney had used forged authorization documents and a false identity badge. He had entered the unit alone and left carrying several archive boxes. When investigators compared the missing documents to Samuel Harlan's copies, the pattern became clear. Richard had removed records connected to Evelyn's estate revisions, draft will changes, correspondence, financial concerns, notes documenting her fears. Everything that could challenge the guardianship narrative. The reason was painfully simple. Richard believed Grant's financial collapse would destroy multiple families tied to local business projects. He convinced himself that protecting Grant was protecting the community. At first, he told himself he was buying time. Then he crossed a line, then another. Eventually, protecting Grant became more important than protecting Evelyn. By the time he realized the damage, it was too late. Grant faced the truth soon afterward. Not in a dramatic courtroom showdown, not with shouting. The reality was quieter and somehow more devastating. Faced with financial records, witness statements, storage facility evidence, and Evelyn's testimony, he stopped denying what happened. The resentment he had carried for years spilled out during interviews and hearings. He admitted he believed Evelyn favored Nathan. He admitted his debts had become overwhelming. He admitted he had encouraged the guardianship process, long after he knew it was no longer about helping her. But he never expected her to disappear into the wilderness. Never expected her to survive. And never imagined Nathan would come home. None of it erased what he had done, yet hearing the truth changed something for Nathan. Not forgiveness, understanding, the difference mattered. The legal process continued for months. Guardianship decisions were reviewed, financial transactions were examined, professional licenses faced scrutiny. Grant lost control over every decision involving Evelyn's affairs. Richard Bell's reputation collapsed under the weight of his own choices. The consequences were real. So were the scars. But for the first time in years, Evelyn was the one making decisions. Not lawyers. Not relatives. Not people claiming to know what was best for her. Her accounts were restored. Property ownership returned to her control. Medical decisions returned to her hands. Most importantly, her voice returned. The community reacted in ways Nathan hadn't expected. Several neighbors visited personally. Some apologized, some cried. Others simply admitted they should have asked more questions, should have listened, should have paid attention when an elderly woman suddenly vanished, and everyone accepted easy explanations. Evelyn accepted their words politely, but she never pretended the damage hadn't happened. Some wounds healed slowly. Some never fully disappeared. That was part of the truth too. Spring arrived gradually in the mountains. Snow retreated from the valleys. The hidden cabin remained standing. Nathan expected Evelyn to leave it behind forever. Instead, she surprised him again. "I want to keep it." They stood together outside the small structure one afternoon. The same cabin that had once symbolized isolation now felt different. It had become proof. Proof that she survived. Proof that she had not disappeared. Proof that someone still had a choice even after others tried to take it away. So they repaired it, not as a home, as a place of remembrance, a place where the truth had finally been found. Months later, Nathan launched a foundation dedicated to helping vulnerable seniors facing financial exploitation and coercive guardianship disputes. The project started small. Legal consultations, advocacy, referrals, emergency support. Nothing glamorous, but it mattered. Every time someone found help before reaching Evelyn's situation, he knew it mattered. One afternoon, nearly a year after he returned to Colorado, Nathan accompanied Evelyn back to the cabin. The mountains were quiet. The air felt clean. The burden that had followed them for so long had finally grown lighter. Not gone, but lighter. Inside the cabin, Evelyn opened one of her journals. The journals she had written during those lonely months. Nathan had read parts before. This time she handed him a page he had never seen. He recognized the date immediately. It was written long before anyone found her, long before the investigation, long before the truth emerged. His eyes moved across the lines. She wrote about the mountains, the silence, the fear. Then one sentence stopped him. I still believe Nathan will find his way home, even if he doesn't know he's looking for me yet. Nathan lowered the journal. For several seconds he couldn't speak. All those years he thought he had been building a future for her. Meanwhile, she had never stopped believing in him, not once. The emotion hit harder than any courtroom testimony, harder than any legal victory. Because it restored something neither money nor justice could return. Trust. As evening settled across the mountains, they stepped outside. The tree line glowed gold beneath the fading sun. For a while they simply stood together in silence. Then Evelyn gently touched his arm. Nathan followed her gaze. At the edge of the forest stood a gray wolf, older now, still, watching. The animal remained there for only a few seconds, long enough to be certain it was real, long enough for gratitude to pass without words. Then it turned and disappeared among the trees. Neither tried to follow, neither needed to. Some journeys ended exactly where they were supposed to. Nathan looked toward the forest one last time before turning back toward the cabin, toward his mother, toward the life waiting beyond the mountains. And for the first time since returning home, he finally felt like he knew the way. Have you ever realized too late that someone you loved needed help long before they asked for it? Share your thoughts below, and thank you for joining this journey.